Welcome to another GDS estimating video on WinBid Pro, and this is following up on the first time using video, and this is like second time using, or no, it's just more information on the first time. So we talked about the menu tree and kind of the gist of getting into the program and what all the things show here in the window, but now it's time to actually create a job because you have to draw an elevation at some point, right? So there are a couple ways to do that. We can click jobs, and then we can also click, maybe I didn't click. So this is where our list of jobs is, and I can just hit add new here to create a new one. And the other option is just to click new here on the tree. So we'll just say first time using test. And the color is unique to the job, not the elevation. So if you have different colored elevations, you'd have to create a separate job with those. And you would just name it part one, part two, first time test bronze, first time test clear, or something like that. So that's one thing, because the optimization is different with different color finishes. So you're not gonna, that makes it a little more complicated. But so I pick my finish, and this is where I can name the elevation. So an elevation description is something like, west side entrance. And then the code is actually something that could match your plans. So it could be something like E1 or whatever the plans say as a code. And then now it's time to pick a framing system. And this goes back to the catalog that you're using, where there's a bunch of pre-configured frames. And working off of your plans, you're going to know what type of system's needed. So if it's screw spline, I can filter my list here. This is what we call the filter bar. And if it's 1-inch glass, I can say I need 1-inch glass. If it's outside glazed, and if it's 2-inch profile, which probably is if it's 1-inch glass usually. But let's say I want a center set too. So I can pick that system, and then I can go ahead and continue on. Now, when selecting that system, that means I've got a bunch of pre-configured parts, which I can go in and edit at any time for any elevation, but right now we're just going to go with what's pre-configured. So now's the time we tell it the quantity of the elevation. So that's like if there's 10 elevations just like this, you'd put a 10 there. So we're just going to leave that at 1 because that's all we need. And then this is where we tell it how many panels there are. So panels are like columns or bays, and that's how our drawings kind of start out. So the width, let's say the width is 189.5 inches. I can make the height 120.5 inches. So I can enter, oops, make that 120. I can do it either way, and the program will just translate it for us. So you'll notice there's a cock joint, some fields for cock joints down here. Right now it's just showing me the frame size and daylight openings. But if I do want cock joints to have a rough opening size, I can add those in. And I can do either fractions or decimals here too. So you'll notice that now we've got dimensions for a rough opening, and we've got dimensions for the actual cock joints. So this particular system has a 1/2-inch sill flashing, and that's on top of the cock joint. So you'll notice that. You can zoom in with your scroll wheel, or if you have a touchpad, you can kind of pinch and zoom that way. I can actually zoom to fit right here. So these little drawing tools are very helpful for a lot of things. And now you'll notice that our columns or panels are equally divided, and there's no horizontals yet. So we can go ahead and quickly add horizontals by clicking on the horizontal tab. I can say add, I can put in a dimension. Now that dimension is from the ground to the bottom of the horizontal. So when you subtract and there's different ways for the dimension to show up on the drawing. Right now it's showing to the bottom of the horizontal to the bottom of the frame. So there's another dimension that we can turn on that shows from the top of the flashing to the bottom of the horizontal. So drawing settings has all that type of stuff here. So there's a bunch of settings in there, and there's other videos that cover drawing settings. So I can add more horizontals just by typing in a value and clicking on add to drawing. So now we've got that. Let's go ahead and put let's say a single door in the middle. So I would say add an entrance, and I tell it I want it in panel 3, and I'm going to add, so I can either add a door frame with no door leaf, I can add a frame and then a door leaf, or I can add a complete entrance. So I'm just going to add a complete entrance, and I'm going to filter this list to left hinged doors, and I see a bunch of 3684. So I'm just going to pick a generic one here, a medium style 2x4.5 left hinged, just because it'll plug a door in real quickly with a 10-inch bottom rail, so it gives me the look I want. Now, a generic one's just going to have a generic part number on the final parts report, so that's something that you need to be aware of, so that you can either add your door parts at the final parts, or you can go back and change the door to something that's already pre-configured. But we know that doors are all different, so it's kind of hard to have a pre-configured door. But if there are doors that you use a lot that are the same, it's easy to just configure one and save it and use it later. So let's look at unequal panels. So if you'll remember that when I stick this door in, so these were all equal to begin with, I stuck a door in that was 36 inches wide, and now it re-equalized the remaining panels. But if I know that my side lights are actually different than this new equal width, I need to go in and specify what those side light widths are. So I can say I want number 2 and number 4, so on either side of the door, I want those panels to be 30 inches. Not 300, but 30. So then I can say 30, and it adds that property to the drawing. So now you'll notice I've got my dimensions correct. So now it's time to either do something else to the drawing. You can add a knee wall or a bulkhead. There's things like that. So let's just do that real quick. So what we call a bulkhead is also known as a knee wall or a little step up, or however you want to call it. Let's say one side of the drawing has a 12-inch little step up, and I want to select the panels 1 and 2 to apply that to. So then it's going to, when I hit add to drawing, to make that little adjustment there, and it shows us a dimension for that little knee wall. So now, let's say that's what I want my drawing to look like. Now it's time to add glass to it. And this is where that glass list shows up that was back here under glass table, only it's kind of shorter. But all the different glass parts are there, and I can use my filtering tool to find the glass. So it doesn't know what kind of glass you need just because it's letting you do whatever you want. So we do know that we picked a system that requires 1-inch glass. So I can filter that. I can also say that it's insulated, and that'll get me true 1-inch glass. And now I can pick from these different things. There's videos on glass also, because there's a lot of other things you can do, like a label, a different label can show up. But let's say it's bronze over clear, and I can apply it by row, by light, or by elevation. For speed, I'm just going to do by elevation. So it's making it all tempered. But if I need a mix of tempered and spandrel and everything else, I can do it by row or by light, and then just pick a different kind of glass and start clicking where it needs to go. So it's real simple to use. You'll notice there's a delete and a view if I want to delete different bays of glass or different lights of glass. So that's in a nutshell how you create your elevation. And I can go back to this layout tab. This is kind of a glass view. And when I get back to layout, it shows me like the frame view. So I can hit next elevation, and it would let me create another one, keep going until I'm done. And then it's time to start working on reports. So in exports and things like that. So that's what we'll talk about in the next video, is more what you do after your drawings are created. So tune in for that. Thanks.